The hook slammed into Marcus's consciousness like a gladius through armor. "Kill him! Kill him!" The crowd's bloodthirsty chant echoed through the cramped underground arena, their faces twisted with savage delight in the flickering torchlight. Marcus Aurelius stood over his fallen opponent, chest heaving, blood, not his own, splattered across his scarred torso. The man beneath him whimpered, begging for mercy with eyes that reminded Marcus of his son's final moments. His son, Gaius, only 7 summers old when finish it. The arena master's voice cut through his thoughts like a whip. Marcus raised his sword, muscles coiled with deadly precision. The crowd held its breath, but as he looked down at the defeated gladiator, barely more than a boy really, something inside him shattered. The sword fell from his grip, clanging against the blood-soaked sand. "I'm done," he said, his voice barely audible above the crowd's shocked gasps. The arena master's face purpled with rage. "You dare!" "I said I'm done," Marcus roared, and for a moment everyone remembered why they called him the Lion of Carthage. Even broken, even hollow, he was still the most dangerous man in that pit. He turned his back on the arena, on the life that had become nothing more than a slow death since that night, 2 years ago. The night they took everything from him, his wife, Aurelia, his daughter, Livia, his son, Gaius, all because he'd refused to throw a fight for Senator Cassius's gambling debts. The cool night air hit him as he emerged from the underground cesspit that passed for an arena in this forgotten corner of the empire. His few possessions, a worn leather pouch with his meager winnings, a dagger, and the small wooden horse he'd carved for Gaius, hung from his belt. He had nowhere to go. Nowhere mattered anymore. That's when he heard the scream. It pierced the night like a blade, high and desperate. A woman's voice. Without thinking, Marcus's body moved. Years of training overriding the numbness that had consumed him. He rounded the corner to find 3 men surrounding a young woman backed against a wall. Slavers, by the look of their chains and cruel grins. "Pretty thing like you will fetch a fine price in Damascus," the largest one said, reaching for her. The woman spat in his face. "I'd rather die." "That can be arranged," another slaver growled. Drawing his blade, Marcus moved like lightning, given form. The first slaver didn't even see him coming. A swift strike to the temple dropped him instantly. The second managed a startled yelp before Marcus's elbow connected with his jaw, sending him sprawling. The leader, the one with the blade, spun to face this new threat. "Walk away," Marcus said quietly, "while you still can." The slaver laughed. "You're outnumbered, fool. My men are unconscious." Marcus's eyes were dead, emotionless. Last chance. Something in those eyes must have spoken louder than words. The slaver backed away, then turned and ran, leaving his companions groaning in the dirt. Marcus turned to leave, but the woman's hand caught his arm. "Wait, please." He looked back, and in the moonlight he saw her clearly for the first time, young, perhaps 20 summers, with dark hair and eyes that held a strange intensity. Something about her face made his chest tighten. She had his daughter's nose, the same determined set to her jaw. "Thank you," she breathed. I have nothing to pay you with, but I don't want payment." He pulled away, but she held firm. "You're hurt." She gestured to a gash on his shoulder he hadn't even noticed. "Please, let me help. It's the least I can do." "I don't need." "I heard you lost your family, Gladiator." The words froze him in place. She continued softly, said the woman he rescued, "My sister will heal your heart." Marcus turned slowly, his hand instinctively moving to his dagger. "Who are you? Who sent you?" "No one sent me. My name is Livia." She must have seen him flinch at the name. His daughter's name. "I know who you are, Marcus Aurelius, the Lion of Carthage. Everyone knows your story. How Senator Cassius had your family." She trailed off, unable to finish. "Don't." His voice was sharp as broken glass. "My sister, Claudia, she's not just a healer of bodies. She has a gift. She's helped others who've lost everything, who've had their souls torn apart. Please, you saved my life. Let us try to save yours." Marcus laughed, a bitter sound devoid of any humor. "No one can bring back the dead, girl, and without them I am dead." "Not bring back," Livia said gently, "but perhaps help you live again. Help you find a reason to keep breathing that isn't just habit." "Why would you care about a broken gladiator?" Livia's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Because I know what it's like to lose everything. Because my sister and I believe that even the most shattered heart can be mended if someone is willing to try. And because—" She hesitated, then pulled something from beneath her cloak. Marcus's world tilted. In her hand was a small leather bracelet, worn and faded. He knew it instantly. He'd made it himself, braided it for his wife on their wedding day. She'd been wearing it when— "Where did you get that?" His voice was barely human. "My sister found it, at the place where it happened. She's kept it, hoping to find you, to return it. She says the gods told her in a dream that returning it would begin a great healing." Marcus's hand trembled as he took the bracelet. It still smelled faintly of the lavender oil Aurelia loved. For the first time in 2 years, he felt something crack in the wall around his heart. Not breaking it down, not yet, but a fissure, letting in the tiniest sliver of something. Not hope, exactly, but maybe the memory of what hope felt like. "Where is your sister?" he heard himself ask. 3 days' journey north, in the healing temple of Minerva. "Will you come?" Marcus looked at the bracelet, then at this young woman who bore his daughter's name, and his wife's courage. What did he have to lose? He was already dead inside. Perhaps this healer could at least give him a cleaner end than the arena would. "I'll come," he said, "but don't expect miracles. Some wounds don't heal." Livia smiled sadly. "All wounds heal, Gladiator. Some just leave deeper scars than others. Come, we should leave before those slavers wake up, or their friend returns with reinforcements." As they disappeared into the night, neither noticed the figure watching from the shadows. A figure who wore the purple stripe of the Senate. A figure who smiled coldly before melting back into the darkness. Senator Cassius had been looking for Marcus Aurelius for 2 years. The gladiator had vanished after the incident, denying Cassius the pleasure of watching him die slowly in the arena. But now, finally, he had found him. And this time Cassius would make sure Marcus lost even more than his family. He would lose his soul itself. The journey had begun, but whether toward healing or deeper darkness, only the gods knew. The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty road as Marcus and Livia made their way north. They had walked through the night, putting distance between themselves and the city. Marcus moved with the practiced efficiency of a soldier, his eyes constantly scanning for threats, while Livia struggled to match his relentless pace. "We can rest soon," he said without looking back, noting her labored breathing. "There's a way station another hour ahead." "I'm fine," Livia insisted, though her feet screamed otherwise. She studied the gladiator's back, the map of scars that told stories of countless battles. Yet none of those wounds, she suspected, cut as deep as the ones that didn't show. The bracelet now hung from his belt, and she noticed how his hand would unconsciously touch it every few minutes, as if reassuring himself it was real. They reached the way station as the sun climbed toward its zenith. It was little more than a shabby inn, with a stable, but it offered shade and water. Marcus paid for a meal with some of his arena winnings, and they sat in the corner, away from the few other travelers. "Tell me about your sister," he said suddenly, breaking the silence that had stretched between them. Livia looked up from her bread, surprised. "Claudia is special. She's always been different, even as a child. She could sense people's pain, not just physical, but..." She touched her chest. "Here, our mother said she was blessed by Minerva herself. Or cursed," Marcus muttered. "Feeling everyone's pain sounds like a burden, not a blessing." "Perhaps both," Livia admitted. "It nearly destroyed her once. When our parents died in the plague 5 years ago, she felt their passing so intensely she didn't speak for months. But when she finally emerged from that darkness, she was changed. Stronger. She said the goddess had shown her that pain was just love, with nowhere to go, and that healing meant helping that love find its way again. Marcus's jaw tightened. Pretty words, but some pain is just pain. Some losses can't be philosophized away. She doesn't claim to take away the pain, Livia said gently. She says that would be like trying to forget the love that caused it. Instead, she helps people carry it differently. She paused, then asked, "Will you tell me about them, your family?" The temperature seemed to drop despite the noon heat. Marcus's hand moved to the bracelet again. "No," he said flatly. But then, surprising himself, he continued, "My wife's name was Aurelia. She laughed like summer rain. My daughter Livia," he glanced at her, "same as you. 8 summers, wanted to be a warrior like her father. And Gaius," his voice cracked, 7. Loved horses. I was teaching him to ride." "What happened?" Livia whispered. Marcus's eyes went distant, seeing another time, another place. "Senator Cassius wanted me to throw a fight. Big money riding on it. I refused. I was the lion of Carthage. I had my pride, my honor. Thought that meant something." He laughed bitterly. "Pride, honor, words that mean nothing when you're kneeling in your family's blood." Livia reached across the table, her hand hovering near his but not quite touching. "It wasn't your fault, wasn't it?" Marcus pulled away. "I chose my reputation over their safety. I knew Cassius was dangerous, knew he had connections to the worst kinds of men. But I thought being the Empire's greatest gladiator made me untouchable. I was wrong. They didn't touch me at all. They touched everyone I loved, instead." Before Livia could respond, the inn door burst open. 3 men entered, and Marcus instantly recognized the type: mercenaries, well-armed and searching for someone. His hand moved to his dagger as their leader's eyes swept the room and locked onto their table. "That's them," the man said to his companions. "The gladiator and the girl." Marcus was already moving, flipping the table toward them as he pushed Livia behind him. "Back door," he hissed. "Run." But she didn't run. Instead, she grabbed a clay pitcher from a nearby table and hurled it at the nearest mercenary, catching him in the face. "I'm not leaving you." There was no time to argue. The mercenaries charged, and the small inn erupted into chaos. Marcus fought like a man possessed, every movement efficient and lethal. He disarmed one attacker and used the man's own sword against him, while dodging a blade meant for his throat. But they were outnumbered, and in the confined space, his advantage of skill was diminished. A sword point found his side, sliding between his ribs. He grunted, stumbling, and saw another blade descending toward his head. Then Livia was there, swinging a chair with surprising strength, knocking the attacker sideways. "The window," she shouted. They crashed through the shutters in a shower of splinters, rolling into the stable yard. Marcus pressed a hand to his bleeding side as they ran for the horses. Behind them, shouts indicated their pursuers were following. They mounted the nearest horse, a sturdy mare that protested the sudden weight, but responded to Marcus's experienced hand. They rode hard, the wound in Marcus's side sending fire through him with each movement. The horses' hooves thundered against the road as they pushed north, but he could hear pursuit behind them. "Who were they?" Livia shouted over the wind. "Cassius's men," Marcus gritted out. He must have been watching, waiting. His vision blurred, and he realized he was losing too much blood. The wound was deeper than he'd thought. "There," Livia pointed to a dense forest off the road. "We can lose them in the trees." They plunged into the forest, branches whipping past them. The sounds of pursuit grew fainter, but Marcus knew they were leaving a blood trail. His strength was fading fast. Just when he thought he might fall from the saddle, Livia guided them to a hidden grove, where a small stream bubbled through moss-covered stones. "Here," she said, helping him dismount. He collapsed against a tree, his tunic soaked with blood. Livia tore strips from her cloak, pressing them against the wound. "We need to stop the bleeding." "Leave me," Marcus gasped. "They want me, not you. You can still get away. Stop being noble. It doesn't suit you." Livia snapped, her fear making her sharp. "I didn't save you from those slavers, just to abandon you to Cassius's dogs." She worked frantically, using skills she'd learned from watching her sister. "Besides, Claudia would never forgive me if I showed up without you." Despite the pain, Marcus almost smiled. "Stubborn girl, you remind me of..." He couldn't finish. The darkness was creeping in from the edges of his vision. Stay with me, Livia pleaded. Tell me about Gaius. What was his favorite game? Soldiers, Marcus mumbled, fighting to stay conscious. He'd line up his wooden figures, make me tell him stories about battles, always made sure the good soldiers won. And they will win, Livia said fiercely. You'll win. You'll survive this and get to Claudia, and she'll help you heal. Not just your body but everything else too. I know it seems impossible now, but please, just hold on. Through his fading consciousness, Marcus heard something that made his heart stutter. Hoofbeats, multiple horses, getting closer. They'd been found. He tried to push Livia away, to tell her to run, but she held firm. Together, she said simply. We face them together. As the first of Cassius's men crashed through the underbrush, Marcus found strength he didn't know he had left. Not for himself. He'd given up on himself long ago. But for this brave girl who bore his daughter's name, who refused to abandon him even when logic demanded it. He struggled to his feet, swaying but standing, his hand finding his dagger. Well, the lead mercenary sneered, the lion of Carthage bleeding out like a stuck pig. Senator Cassius will be pleased. He's waited a long time for this. If you want him, you'll have to go through me, Livia said, stepping in front of Marcus. The mercenary laughed. Little girl, you have no idea what you're. He never finished the sentence. An arrow sprouted from his hurt, and he toppled backward. More arrows whistled from the trees, finding their marks with deadly precision. The remaining mercenaries scrambled for cover, shouting in confusion. From the forest emerged figures in green cloaks, bows drawn, moving with practiced stealth. Forest guardians, Livia breathed. The protectors of Minerva's sacred grounds. We must be close to the temple. The lead guardian, a woman with silver-streaked hair and keen eyes, approached them. You bring violence to sacred land, she said sternly, then her expression softened as she saw Marcus's wound. But you are hurt, and you travel with one who bears the healer's mark. She gestured to a pendant Livia wore, which Marcus hadn't noticed before, a small owl, symbol of Minerva. My sister is Claudia, healer of the temple, Livia said quickly. This man saved my life. Please, he needs help. The guardian studied Marcus with eyes that seemed to see more than just his physical form. The Lion of Carthage, she said quietly. Yes, we have been expecting you. Claudia spoke of a dream, a broken warrior seeking what cannot be given, only discovered. She gestured to her companions. Bring him, carefully. The goddess watches over those who protect the innocent, even when they believe themselves beyond redemption. As strong hands lifted him onto a makeshift stretcher, Marcus's fading consciousness registered one last thought before darkness claimed him. He had come seeking death or forgetfulness. Instead, he had found someone willing to stand between him and danger, just as he had once stood for others. Perhaps that was its own kind of healing, or perhaps it was just another cruel joke of the gods, giving him something to care about just so it could be ripped away again. Either way, he was too tired to fight anymore. He let the darkness take him, Aurelius' bracelet clutched in his bloody hand, while somewhere above, an owl called out, Minerva's voice echoing through the sacred forest. Marcus drifted in and out of consciousness, caught between memory and fever dream. He was back in the arena, but the sand kept turning to blood, his family's blood. He was holding Gaius, teaching him to ride, but when he looked down, his son's face was pale and still. Aurelia called his name, but when he turned, she dissolved like mist. Through it all, a cool hand touched his burning forehead, and a voice like silver bells whispered words in a language he didn't recognize. When he finally opened his eyes, he was lying in a chamber filled with soft light. White curtains billowed in a gentle breeze, and the air smelled of herbs and incense. For a moment he thought he had died, and somehow, despite everything, the gods had shown mercy. Then the pain in his side reminded him he was very much alive. You're awake, a gentle voice said. He turned his head to see a woman sitting beside his bed. She looked like Livia, but older, with the same dark hair worn long and loose. Her eyes were ancient, holding depths of understanding that seemed impossible for someone who couldn't have seen more than 25 summers. Claudia, he said, his voice rough from disuse. She smiled, a sad, knowing expression. Yes. And you are Marcus Aurelius, the Lion of Carthage, the man who lost everything and thinks he deserves to lose even more. She held up a hand before he could respond. My sister told me nothing. I didn't already know. I've been dreaming of you for months, Gladiator. The goddess shows me those who need healing, whether they seek it or not. I don't need healing, Marcus said automatically. The wound in your side is nearly mended. You've been here 3 days. The wound in your heart. She touched her chest. That's why you're really here. Marcus tried to sit up, but she placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Where's Livia? Is she safe? She's fine. Exhausting my assistants with her constant questions about you. She feels responsible for your injury. Claudia studied him. She told me how you saved her from the slavers without knowing who she was. How you fought Cassius's men to protect her. Tell me, Marcus, why save a stranger when you claim to care about nothing? Instinct, he muttered. Training. Lies we tell ourselves are the heaviest chains, Claudia said softly. You saved her because despite your pain, you are still who you always were. A protector. A man who stands between the innocent and those who would harm them. Your family's death didn't change that. It only convinced you that you failed at the one protection that mattered most. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest. You know nothing about it. You weren't there. You didn't see. His voice broke. No, I wasn't there, Claudia agreed. But I see you now. I see a man so consumed by guilt that he punishes himself more harshly than any enemy could. Tell me, Marcus, do you think Aurelia would want this? Would little Gaius want his father to become a hollow shell, fighting in death pits, waiting for someone skilled enough or lucky enough to end his misery? Don't. The word came out as a growl. Don't you dare use their names. Someone needs to, Claudia said, unperturbed by his anger. When was the last time you spoke them aloud? When was the last time you remembered them as they were, not just as they died? She reached for something on the bedside table, Aurelia's bracelet. This held love once, now it holds only pain. But they're the same thing, Marcus. Love and pain, 2 sides of one coin. You cannot have one without risking the other. Marcus turned his face away. What do you want from me? Nothing. But I believe you have something to give to yourself, to the world, maybe even to my sister, who looks at you like you hung the moon and stars. At his startled look, she smiled. Oh, not like that. But she sees in you something she lost when our parents died. A protector, someone who would face down the world for a stranger. Do you know how rare that is? It's not rare. It's stupid. Protecting people just gives the world targets to hurt you with. Claudia was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood, moving to a window that overlooked a garden where other patients walked among the flowers. There was a soldier who came here once. He'd lost his entire legion to betrayal, 60 men who trusted him, dead because someone he considered a brother sold their position to the enemy. He came here wanting to die just like you. What happened to him? Marcus asked, despite himself. I told him the same thing I'm going to tell you. The dead don't need our guilt. They need our remembrance. They need us to live the lives they cannot, to carry forward the love they gave us. Not as a burden, but as a gift. She turned back to him. That soldier now trains young legionaries, teaching them not just to fight, but to recognize the signs of betrayal. He saves lives every day. His pain became purpose. It's not the same. My family wasn't soldiers. They were innocent. They died because of my pride. And if you could go back, would you make a different choice? Marcus was quiet for a long time. Yes, he finally whispered. That's your first lie to me, Claudia said gently. You would never dishonor yourself because you knew your children looked up to you. You wanted them to see a father who stood for something. The tragedy isn't that you made that choice. It's that evil men made you pay such a price for it. A knock at the door interrupted them. Livia peered in, her face lighting up when she saw Marcus awake. You're up. I was so worried. When you collapsed in the forest, all that blood. She rushed to his bedside, then seemed to remember herself and stepped back, blushing. I'm harder to kill than I look, Marcus said. surprising himself with the gentle tone. "I'll leave you two to talk," Claudia said. "But Marcus, think about what I said. The healing here isn't just about herbs and bandages. When you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be here." She glided out, leaving them alone. Livia took the chair her sister had vacated, fidgeting with the hem of her tunic. "I'm sorry, this is my fault. If I hadn't asked you to come, you saved my life," Marcus interrupted. "In the inn, in the forest. You could have run, should have run. Why didn't you?" She met his eyes, and again he was struck by how much steel lived in that young frame. "Because I knew what it was like to have no one stand by you when everything falls apart. When our parents died, Claudia and I only had each other. If we'd been separated," she shuddered, "I couldn't let you face them alone, not after you saved me. You don't owe me anything. It's not about owing," Livia said fiercely. "It's about choosing to stand with someone even when it's dangerous, choosing to believe that people are worth saving, even when they don't believe it themselves." She paused, then added more quietly, "My sister says you're planning to leave as soon as you can walk." Marcus didn't deny it. "Cassius knows where I am now. I've brought danger to your door. The sooner I leave, the safer you'll all be. Or you could stay and help us face that danger. The temple has guardians, but they could use someone with your skills. Someone who knows how Cassius thinks, how he operates." She leaned forward. "He's not going to stop, you know. Men like him never do. Whether you're here or somewhere else, he'll keep coming. At least here you wouldn't be alone." "I work better alone." "No," Livia said simply. "You die better alone. There's a difference." Before Marcus could respond, a commotion arose from the garden. Shouts, the clash of metal, screams. He was on his feet instantly, ignoring the pull of his wound. Livia grabbed his arm. "You're not healed yet." But Marcus was already moving, soldier's instincts overriding pain. He burst out of the chamber to find chaos in the temple courtyard. Men in dark tunics were attacking the guardians, patients fleeing in terror. At the center of it all stood a figure Marcus recognized with a chill of hatred. Tribune Alexius, Cassius's right hand, and the man who had led the attack on his family. There, Alexius spotted him and smiled coldly. "The lion shows himself at last. Senator Cassius sends his regards, Gladiator. He wanted you to know that everyone who helps you will suffer the same fate as your family. Starting with these foolish healers." Marcus felt the old rage, the killing fury that had made him legendary in the arena, but now it had focus, purpose. These weren't just random opponents. These were the men who had taken everything from him. A guardian's sword lay near his feet where its owner had fallen. Marcus scooped it up, the weight familiar and comforting in his hand. "Alexius," he said, his voice carrying across the courtyard, "I've dreamed of this moment. Dreams are all you have left, slave." Alexius sneered, "That and a fresh collection of corpses to mourn. Kill them all. Leave no witnesses." The battle erupted in earnest. Despite his wound, Marcus fought like a man possessed. Every strike was precise, lethal, years of arena training combined with a personal vendetta. He cut through Alexius's men like a scythe through wheat, making his way toward the tribune. But there were too many, and the temple guardians were healers first, warriors second. He saw them falling, saw innocent patients cut down, and felt his heart fracture all over again. Not again. He couldn't watch innocents die because of him again. Then Claudia appeared at the top of the temple steps, and her voice rang out with unexpected power. "Enough." She raised a staff topped with Minerva's owl, and some force rippled out from her. The attacking soldiers stumbled, clutching their heads as if in pain. "You dare spill blood in the goddess's sacred space. You will know her wrath." The effect was momentary, but it was enough. The temple guardians rallied, and Marcus pressed his advantage. He finally reached Alexius, their swords meeting in a shower of sparks. "You murdered children," Marcus snarled between strikes. "Children? Orders are orders," Alexius replied, parrying desperately. He was skilled, but he had never faced Marcus at full fury. Though I admit, your boy squealed particularly loudly. Marcus's blade found its mark, sliding between Alexius's ribs. The tribune's eyes widened in shock as he fell to his knees. "Tell Cassius," Marcus said coldly, "that I'm coming for him. Tell him in whatever hell awaits child killers." Alexius toppled forward, dead before he hit the ground. Seeing their leader fall, the remaining attackers fled. The courtyard fell silent, except for the moans of the wounded. Marcus stood over Alexius's body, breathing hard, blood seeping through his bandages. The sword fell from his nerveless fingers as the adrenaline faded and pain rushed back. "Marcus?" Livia was at his side, supporting him as his knees buckled. "You're bleeding again. Claudia? Help." But when Claudia approached, her face was grave. "You saved us," she said quietly, "but at what cost to yourself? Your wound has reopened, and worse." She touched his chest, over his heart. "The darkness in here has deepened. Killing that man brought you no peace, did it?" Marcus laughed bitterly, blood flecking his lips. "Peace? I don't seek peace, only justice." "They're often not the same thing," Claudia said sadly. "But come, let us tend your body again, your spirit that will take longer." As they helped him back inside, Marcus caught sight of the garden where patients had been walking peacefully just moments before. Now it was stained with blood, scattered with bodies. Because of him, always because of him. The weight of it crushed down on him heavier than any physical wound. "This is what I bring," he said to Livia, who still supported him. "Death follows me. You should have let me die in that forest." "No," she said firmly. "Death follows Cassius. You're just the excuse he uses. But that changes now. We know he'll come again, and we'll be ready. All of us, together." Marcus wanted to argue to push her away for her own safety. But the blood loss was making him dizzy, and her presence was oddly comforting. Like having a daughter again, someone who looked at him with trust instead of fear. It terrified him more than any enemy's blade. As darkness crept in at the edges of his vision again, he heard Claudia organizing the temple's defense. Livia calling for bandages, guardians tending to the wounded. They moved with purpose, with hope, even in the face of disaster. And for the first time in 2 years, Marcus felt something besides pain and rage. He felt responsible, not just for his own death, but for their lives. It was a feeling he'd sworn never to allow again. But as Livia squeezed his hand and promised everything would be all right, he realized it was already too late. He cared. Despite every wall he'd built, despite every vow he'd made, he cared about these people who had taken him in and stood by him. The gods, it seemed, weren't done torturing him yet. The days following the attack blurred together as Marcus recovered from his reopened wounds. The temple had transformed from a place of healing into an armed camp, with guardians patrolling in shifts and weapons stored in every corridor. Marcus watched it all from his bed, with a mixture of guilt and grim satisfaction. At least they were no longer defenseless. Claudia spent hours with the wounded, her gift taxing her visibly as she absorbed their pain to speed their healing. Marcus saw her age days in mere hours, dark circles forming under her eyes as she moved from patient to patient. "She's killing herself," he told Livia one evening, as they watched Claudia work in the garden, tending to a young guardian who'd taken a blade meant for a patient. "This gift of hers, it's draining her." Livia's face tightened with worry. "She's always been like this. She can't bear to see others suffer when she has the power to help. Our mother used to say Claudia felt too much for this world." She paused, then added quietly, "I think that's why the goddess chose her. The gods are cruel that way, giving gifts that destroy those who bear them." Marcus knew about cruel gifts. His skill with the blade had brought him fame, fortune, and ultimately the attention of those who would destroy his family. "She should stop. Rest. Would you?" Livia challenged. If you could take someone's pain into yourself and spare them suffering, wouldn't you do it? Marcus didn't answer, but they both knew the truth. He'd already proven he would take on the world's violence to protect others. It's what had saved Livia, what had driven him to fight, despite his wounds. The difference was that violence was something he understood, something with clear rules and outcomes. This healing magic, this willing absorption of agony that was beyond his comprehension. That night, unable to sleep, Marcus made his way to the temple's inner sanctum, where a statue of Minerva stood watch. He hadn't prayed since the night his family died, had cursed the gods for their indifference. But now, looking at the goddess of wisdom's serene face, he felt words rising unbidden. "Why?" he whispered to the stone owl perched on Minerva's shoulder. "Why save me? Why put these good people in danger for a broken gladiator who wants nothing more than to join his family in death? Because broken things can be reforged." Claudia's voice came from behind him. She entered the sanctum, moving slowly, exhausted from her healing work. "And because my goddess shows me truth in dreams, Marcus Aurelius, would you like to know what I've seen?" Marcus turned away from the statue. More mystical nonsense about healing and purpose. "No," Claudia said simply. "I've seen your daughter." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. His hand went to his dagger instinctively. Don't you dare." "She comes to me in dreams," Claudia continued, undeterred by his anger. "A beautiful child, with your eyes and her mother's smile. She stands in fields of golden wheat, and she weeps, not for her own death, but for yours, the walking death you've chosen." She moved closer, and Marcus could see tears on her cheeks. "She begs me to save her father, to remind him that love doesn't end with death, that she waits for him in the Elysian fields. But not yet, not like this." Marcus felt his knees buckle. He caught himself against a pillar, shaking. "You're lying, using tricks to—" "She said you called her your little owl, that you used to carry her on your shoulders through the market, and she would spread her arms like wings." Claudia's voice was gentle but relentless. "She said her favorite game was when you would toss her in the air and catch her, and she felt like she was flying. She wants you to know she's still flying, just in a different sky." A sound escaped Marcus, raw and wounded. He slid down the pillar to sit on the cold stone floor, shoulders shaking with sobs he'd held back for 2 years. Claudia knelt beside him, not touching, just present. "This is cruel," he gasped between sobs. "This is torture. This is healing." Claudia corrected softly. "You've carried your grief like a blade in your chest, never allowing it to flow, to change, to transform into something bearable. Grief is love with nowhere to go, Marcus. Let it go, let it flow. Your family is not gone. They've simply gone ahead, and they want you to live, truly live, until it's your time to join them." "I failed them," Marcus choked out. "I should have been there, should have protected them." "You were protecting others in the arena, forced to fight for the crowd's pleasure. The failure belongs to those who took them, not to you." Claudia finally placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Your wife, does she come to your dreams?" Marcus nodded, unable to speak. "And does she blame you? Does she curse your name and demand vengeance?" "No," Marcus whispered. She tells me to be strong, to find a reason to continue. But I can't. I'm not strong without them." "Then be weak," Claudia said simply. "Be weak and let others be strong for you until you remember how." That's what Livia has been trying to show you. That's what this temple offers. Not just healing of the body, but a place to be broken safely until you're ready to be whole again. They sat in silence for a long time, Marcus's grief flowing freely for the first time since that terrible night. When the tears finally stopped, he felt emptied, but somehow cleaner, like a wound that had been lanced of poison. "Your sister," he said hoarsely. "She saved more than my life in that forest." Claudia smiled. "She has a gift too, though different from mine. She sees the worth in people that they've forgotten in themselves. It's why I sent her south, hoping she would find you." Marcus looked up sharply. "You sent her?" The slavers were real and unexpected. "But yes, I sent her to the city to find you. I knew you fought in the underground arenas. Your pain called to me across the miles. I hoped she would cross your path." Claudia's expression grew troubled. "I didn't foresee the danger. That was my failing. Or the goddess's plan," Marcus said, surprising himself. "Without the danger, I wouldn't have acted, wouldn't have come here." He struggled to his feet, feeling older than his years, but somehow lighter. "Cassius will come again, with more men. He won't tolerate failure." "I know." Claudia rose as well. "That's why I need to ask something of you, something that goes against every instinct you have." She met his eyes. "I need you to teach us to fight. Not just the guardians, but anyone willing to learn. We've relied on the temple's sacred status for protection for too long. That won't save us anymore." Marcus was already shaking his head. "I'm a gladiator, not a weapons master. And training civilians to fight, train soldiers, it's not possible in the time we have." "Then teach us to survive," Claudia pressed. "Teach us to defend ourselves long enough for help to arrive. The regional garrison is only 2 days away. If we can hold out that long, when Cassius comes, we might have a chance." "Why should I?" Marcus asked. "Why should I?" Marcus asked, though without real resistance. "Why draw more blood to this sacred place? Because whether you stay or go, Cassius will come here now. He knows I'm sheltering you." And because Claudia's eyes grew distant, that otherworldly look that meant she was seeing beyond the present, "There are children here, Marcus. Orphans we've taken in. Would you have them face soldiers defenseless?" It was a low blow, and they both knew it. Marcus closed his eyes, seeing his own children's faces. "You fight dirty for a healer. I fight to protect those under my care. As do you, when you allow yourself." She touched his arm gently. "Think about it. Pray about it. If you still remember how the goddess brought you here for a reason, Marcus Aurelius. Perhaps it wasn't just to heal your wounds, but to prevent new ones from being made." She left him alone in the sanctum, with Minerva's stone eyes watching him in the flickering candlelight. Marcus looked up at the goddess, at her owl, and remembered carrying little Livia on his shoulders. "Your wings, my little owl," he used to say. "Spread your wings." Maybe it was time to teach others to fly before they were forced to fall. The next morning, Marcus emerged from his chamber to find a small crowd gathered in the courtyard. Word had spread that the famous gladiator might teach them to defend themselves. They were a motley group, temple guardians, who knew which end of a sword to hold, but little else. Healing assistants who had never held a weapon, even some of the older orphans, who should have been thinking about play, not war. Livia stood among them, chin raised defiantly as if daring him to send her away. "You want to learn to fight," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "But fighting isn't what will save you. Dying well might make you heroes, but living smart makes you survivors. If you want heroes, find another teacher. If you want to see another sunrise when trained killers come for you, then listen." An older guardian stepped forward. "We're not warriors, Gladiator. Most of us came here to escape violence, not embrace. And yet violence has found you," Marcus replied. "It always finds those who want peace most. The question is whether you'll be sheep when the wolves come, or something else. Something with teeth of your own." He spent the morning assessing what he had to work with. It wasn't encouraging. The guardians had basic training, but no real combat experience. The healers flinched at the thought of causing pain. The orphans were eager, but fragile. Yet as he watched them struggle through basic drills, Marcus felt something stir in his chest. They were trying. Despite fear, despite inexperience, they were trying to become something more than victims. "Your stance is too wide," he told a young healer named Demetrius. "A child could knock you over." Here, he adjusted the boy's feet, showed him how to keep his center low. "Power comes from the ground up, remember that." "Marcus," Livia called from across the courtyard where she was practicing with a borrowed sword. "Am I doing this right?" He made his way over, noted her white-knuckled grip. the tension in her shoulders. You're holding it like you're afraid of it. A sword is a tool, nothing more. Respect it, don't fear it. He adjusted her hands, stood behind her to guide her through a basic thrust. There, feel the difference? She nodded, then surprised him by asking, "Did you teach your daughter swordplay?" The question should have hurt, but somehow it didn't. She was too young, but I was planning to when... He trailed off, then continued more firmly. She would have been good at it. She had quick hands, and a quicker mind, like you. Livia beamed at the comparison, and Marcus felt the dangerous warmth in his chest again. He was starting to care about these people, starting to invest in their survival. It terrified him more than any army could. The day wore on, and slowly, painfully, he began to see progress. They would never be soldiers, but perhaps they didn't need to be. Perhaps they just needed to be dangerous enough to make attacking them costly. As the sun began to set, Claudia appeared with water and food for the trainees. She moved among them, offering encouragement, tending minor bruises. When she reached Marcus, she handed him a cup with a knowing smile. "Thank you," she said simply. "Don't thank me yet," Marcus warned. "Knowing how to hold a sword won't save them from Cassius's killers." "No," Claudia agreed, "but knowing someone believes they're worth saving might." "You've given them more than techniques today, Marcus. You've given them hope." That night, as Marcus made his usual restless rounds of the temple grounds, he found he wasn't alone. Livia fell into step beside him, carrying a practice sword. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked. "Sleep and I parted ways 2 years ago," Marcus replied. "You should rest. Tomorrow's training will be harder. I'll manage." They walked in companionable silence for a while before Livia spoke again. "Can I ask you something about before?" Marcus tensed but nodded. "Were you happy before everything happened? Were you happy as a gladiator?" The question caught him off guard. "I was proud, famous, wealthy enough to give my family a good life. But happy," he considered. "I was happiest in the moments between fights, coming home to them, being just a husband and father instead of the lion of Carthage. Those were the times that mattered. My father was a merchant," Livia offered. "Not famous or wealthy, but he loved his work. He used to say that any honest labor that fed your family was noble. I think he would have liked you." "A gladiator is hardly honest labor," Marcus said bitterly. "We're killers dressed up as entertainment." "You were a slave forced to fight for survival," Livia corrected. "And you did it to protect and provide for those you loved." "That sounds noble to me." They reached the temple's outer wall, where the forest pressed close. In the darkness beyond, danger waited. Cassius was out there, planning, gathering forces. But for this moment, in this place, there was peace. "Your sister asked me to teach you all to fight," Marcus said. "But I think you're teaching me something too." "What's that?" "That maybe surviving isn't enough. Maybe there needs to be something worth surviving for." He looked down at her, this young woman who had his daughter's name and his wife's courage. "Don't let me forget that. When the darkness comes again." "I won't," Livia promised. "And Marcus, when Cassius comes, and he will come, we'll face him together, all of us. You're not alone anymore, whether you like it or not." Marcus wanted to argue, to push her away for her own safety. But looking at her determined face in the moonlight, he knew it was too late. These people had claimed him, broken through his walls with their stubborn faith and inexplicable loyalty. He was theirs now, as much as they were his. And when Cassius came to destroy what Marcus had found here, he would find the Lion of Carthage waiting. Not the broken gladiator seeking death, but something far more dangerous, a man with something to protect again. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, for the first time in 2 years, Marcus Aurelius felt something almost like hope. 2 weeks passed in a blur of training and preparation. The temple had transformed from a place of quiet healing into something resembling a military camp, though Marcus would never insult actual soldiers by calling his trainees an army. Still, they improved daily. The guardians learned to work in pairs, covering each other's weaknesses. The healers discovered that knowing anatomy made them surprisingly effective at disabling opponents. Even the older orphans showed promise. their smaller size becoming an advantage in mobility drills. Marcus stood in the pre-dawn darkness, watching his makeshift troops run through formation. Livia led one group, having proven herself a natural leader despite her youth. She caught his eye and grinned, and he found himself almost smiling back before catching himself. Attachment was still dangerous, still a vulnerability he couldn't afford. Yet every day it grew harder to maintain that distance. "You're proud of them," Claudia observed, joining him on the temple steps. She looked exhausted, the constant healing taking its toll, but her eyes remained bright with that otherworldly awareness. "They're not completely hopeless," Marcus admitted grudgingly. "Though pride suggests I expect them to succeed, I'm simply trying to ensure they don't die immediately." Claudia laughed softly, always the optimist. "Have you given thought to what happens after? After Cassius comes, after we survive, and we will survive, Marcus. What then? Will you stay?" Marcus was saved from answering by a commotion at the temple gates. A lone rider approached, swaying in the saddle, clearly exhausted. The guards challenged him, but his response made them quickly open the gates. As the rider entered the courtyard, Marcus recognized him. Quintus, one of his few friends from his gladiator days, a man who had earned his freedom years before. "Marcus," Quintus practically fell from his horse. "Thank the gods I found you. I've been riding for 3 days straight." Marcus caught his old friend, noting the blood on his tunic. "What happened? Why are you here?" "Warning," Quintus gasped. "Cassius, he's coming, not just with soldiers. He's hired the Black Wolves." A chill ran through the courtyard. Even Marcus felt his blood cool. The Black Wolves were mercenaries, but that term didn't do them justice. They were killers who had turned slaughter into an art form, banned from Rome itself for their excesses. If Cassius had hired them, how many? Marcus demanded. 50, maybe 60, plus Cassius's own men. Quintus gripped Marcus's arm. "Brother, you need to run. Take whoever matters to you and run. The wolves don't take prisoners, don't honor surrenders. They're coming to make an example of this place." "When?" Claudia asked, her face pale but composed. 3 days, maybe 4. "They were gathering supplies when I learned of it." Quintus looked around the courtyard at the training civilians. "These people can't fight the wolves. No one can. They once slaughtered an entire legion that was sent to bring them to justice." Marcus felt the weight of every eye in the courtyard on him. His trainees had stopped their drills, fear replacing determination on their faces. This was the moment that mattered, not the fighting, but the choosing. Run and perhaps save some, or stand and likely lose all. "Livia," he said quietly, "gather the council, we need to decide." The council convened in the temple's main hall. Claudia, the senior guardians, representatives from the healers, and Livia, who had somehow become his unofficial second-in-command. Quintus sat wrapped in bandages, having finally allowed his wounds to be tended. The debate was heated and fearful. "We should evacuate," insisted Harim, the eldest guardian. "Save who we can, the children at least." "And go where?" another guardian argued. "Cassius will hunt us wherever we run. At least here we have walls, supplies." "Walls won't stop the Black Wolves," someone else said. "Nothing stops them." Marcus let them argue, studying each face. These people had become something to him over the past weeks, though he tried to deny it. The young healer, who flinched at violence, but stood his ground. The widow who had lost her husband to bandits, but refused to let fear rule her. The orphan boy who reminded him painfully of Gaius. When had their survival become more important than his death wish? "Enough," he said finally, and the room fell silent. "Quintus is right. The Black Wolves are beyond anything I've trained you for. If you want to run, I won't stop you. But know this, running splits us up, makes us easy prey. The wolves excel at hunting scattered targets. Here, at least, we force them to face us, united." "United in death," Harim said bitterly. "Perhaps, or united in something else." Marcus stood, decision crystallizing. "Send riders to the garrison. Tell them the Black Wolves are in the region. That alone should bring them running. They've wanted an excuse to deal with those bastards for years. If we can hold for 2 days once the attack begins, you think we can hold against the wolves for 2 days?" Livia asked, though her tone suggested she'd follow him regardless of the odds. No, Marcus said honestly, but we might hold long enough to make them pay, to make Cassius pay. And sometimes that's all you can ask for, to make your death cost something. Claudia had been silent throughout the discussion, her eyes holding that distant look that meant she was seeing beyond the present. Now she stirred. There's another way. Everyone turned to her. She stood slowly, power radiating from her small frame. The goddess has shown me. Cassius wants Marcus. Yes, but more than that, he wants to destroy hope, to show that no one who helps his enemies will be spared. But what if we turn that around? What if we show that standing against tyrants creates more resistance, not less? But plainly, sister, Livia urged. The Black Wolves are monsters, but they're mortal monsters. They bleed, they die, they fear, though they hide it well. And they have a weakness. Claudia's eyes fixed on Marcus. They're superstitious. They won't attack a temple during certain holy days, believing it brings divine curse. The festival of Minerva begins in 2 days. That gives us 5 days total, Marcus calculated quickly. The garrison could arrive by then, if the wolves honor the festival, Harim said doubtfully. They're not known for piety. They're not, Claudia agreed. But their leader, Brutus the Red, lost his entire command once after desecrating a shrine to Mars. Half his men died of plague within a month. Since then he's been cautious about angering the gods. It's knowledge few have, but the goddess provides what we need. Marcus felt a spark of hope, quickly suppressed. Hope was dangerous, but tactics, planning, using an enemy's weakness that he understood. Then we prepare for siege, fortify everything we can, train harder, and pray your goddess's festival is respected by murderers. The meeting dispersed with renewed energy. There was still fear, but now it was mixed with purpose. As people scattered to their tasks, Livia lingered. You could still run, she said quietly. If you left tonight, you'd draw at least some of them away. Probably, Marcus agreed. But you won't. No. Why? Marcus looked at her. This young woman who had become like a daughter to him, despite his best efforts to keep distance. Because a wise person recently told me that surviving isn't enough. There needs to be something worth surviving for. Livia smiled, tears glittering in her eyes. I'll hold you to that when this is over. The next 2 days passed in a frenzy of preparation. Walls were reinforced, supplies stockpiled, weapons distributed. Marcus drove his people hard, but they responded with determination born of desperation. The festival of Minerva began with solemn ceremonies, Claudia leading prayers that seemed to make the very air shimmer with power. Whether it was divine presence or collective faith, Marcus didn't know, but he felt it, a sense of standing on sacred ground that even killers might hesitate to violate. On the morning of the 3rd day, they came. Marcus stood on the wall watching the dark line of men emerge from the forest. The Black Wolves moved like their namesakes, flowing around obstacles with predatory grace. At their head rode a giant of a man with a red beard, Brutus himself, wearing armor decorated with the fangs of actual wolves. Behind them came Cassius's regular soldiers, looking almost comical in their neat formations compared to the wolves' savage efficiency. Quite a sight, Quintus said, joining him on the wall. Despite his wounds, the old gladiator had insisted on staying to fight. I've seen worse, Marcus lied. In the arena, maybe, but those were just men trying to kill you. These are men who enjoy it. Quintus glanced at him. Any regrets? Thousands, Marcus admitted, but not about this. The wolves stopped just outside arrow range, setting up camp with disturbing efficiency. They made no immediate move to attack, and Marcus realized with a chill that they were waiting, watching, testing to see if the temple's defenders would panic, would sally forth in fear or foolish bravery. When neither happened, Brutus himself rode forward, stopping just within shouting distance. Marcus Aurelius, the giant bellowed, the Lion of Carthage. I'd heard you were broken, but here you are playing soldier with farmers and healers. Come out and face me, Gladiator. Give these sheep a chance to scatter before we slaughter them. Marcus didn't respond, didn't move. He'd learned long ago that silence unnerved opponents more than threats. Brutus waited, then laughed. So be it, you have until the festival ends. Then we paint your precious temple with blood. He wheeled his horse around, but not before making an elaborate gesture of respect toward the temple, toward Minerva. So Claudia had been right. The monster had enough fear of the gods to wait. 5 days, Livia said, appearing at Marcus's elbow. Think the garrison will come? They'll come, Marcus said, with more confidence than he felt. The question is whether we'll be alive to greet them. That night, as the wolves' campfires dotted the darkness like predatory eyes, Marcus found himself in the sanctum again. This time, he wasn't alone. Many of the defenders had come to pray, to seek comfort in Minerva's presence. Claudia moved among them, offering blessings, her touch bringing peace despite the looming threat. When she reached Marcus, she sat beside him in comfortable silence. I've been thinking about what you asked, he said, eventually. About after. Oh, if we survive this, when we survive this, he corrected, glancing at her. I want to stay, not as the Lion of Carthage, not as a gladiator, but as something else, someone else. And who would that be? Marcus thought of Livia's faith in him, of the orphans who called him teacher, of the healers who had found strength they didn't know they possessed. I don't know yet, but I'd like to find out. Claudia smiled, and for a moment she looked young, unburdened by her gift. The goddess works in mysterious ways, Marcus Aurelius. Sometimes she breaks us not to destroy, but to remake, like metal in the forge, heated and hammered until it becomes something stronger. Pretty words, Marcus said, but without his usual bitterness. Truth often is. She stood, touched his shoulder gently. Rest tonight, tomorrow the real test begins. As she left, Marcus looked up at Minerva's statue. The stone owl seemed to watch him with knowing eyes. Protect them, he whispered, not sure if he was praying or just hoping. I've failed too many. Don't let me fail these. Outside, the wolves howled, literal howls meant to terrify, but inside the temple, voices rose in hymns to Minerva, drowning out the sound with something stronger than fear. Faith, perhaps, or simple human stubbornness in the face of evil. Whatever it was, Marcus found himself adding his voice to theirs, rusty from disuse but growing stronger with each verse. The calm before the storm was ending, but for tonight, in this moment, they were together. They were alive. They were unafraid. Tomorrow would bring what it would bring. The 4th day of the festival dawned grey and oppressive, clouds gathering like omens overhead. Marcus had slept little, spending most of the night checking defenses and reassuring nervous defenders. The black wolves had been quiet, too quiet. Their fires had burned low, and dawn revealed empty spaces where men should have been. They're testing our perimeter, Marcus told his lieutenants as they gathered for morning briefing. Looking for weaknesses, double the watches, and no one goes outside the walls alone. The first probe came at midday. A group of wolves approached the eastern wall, just close enough to draw arrow fire from nervous defenders. Their arrows fell short, and the wolves laughed, making obscene gestures before melting back into the forest. It was a simple tactic, but effective. Waste the defenders' ammunition, fray their nerves, make them doubt their abilities. Marcus ordered arrows conserved, shots only taken when certain of hits. They're playing with us, Livia observed, frustration clear in her voice. Let them play, Marcus replied. Every hour they waste is another hour closer to reinforcement. But he knew the game wouldn't last. The wolves were professional killers. They wouldn't toy with prey indefinitely. Sure enough, as afternoon faded toward evening, the real testing began. Fire arrows arced over the walls, targeting the wooden structures within. The defenders scrambled with water buckets, dousing flames before they could spread. Then came the war cries from multiple directions, forcing defenders to spread thin along the walls, never knowing which threat was real. Through it all, Brutus the Red sat on his horse just out of range, watching with the patience of a true predator. Marcus met his gaze across the distance, neither man blinking, both taking the other's measure. In another life, they might have faced each other in the arena, champion against champion, crowd roaring for blood. Here, the stakes were infinitely higher. Night fell like a shroud, and with it came the first real assault. Not the full force of the wolves, but a probing attack on the southern gate. Marcus was there in an instant, rallying defenders as grappling hooks sailed over the walls. "Cut the ropes," he shouted. "Don't let them establish a foothold." The defenders responded well, their training holding despite their fear. Quintus fought beside him, the two gladiators a steady rock around which the others could anchor. They repelled the assault, but not without cost. 3 defenders fell, arrows finding gaps in their makeshift armor. Claudia worked through the night, saving who she could, but Marcus saw the toll it took. Each healing drained her further, her gift burning through her like fever. "You need to pace yourself," he told her, as dawn broke on the 5th day. "Tell that to the wounded," she replied, not pausing in her work. "Every life matters, Marcus. Every person we save is a victory against those who would destroy us." The 5th day brought escalation. The wolves had found their range, identified weak points. Concentrated volleys of arrows forced defenders to cower behind battlements. Battering rams, fashioned from fallen trees, tested the gates, and always, the psychological warfare howls in the night. Mutilated animal carcasses flung over walls, voices calling out obscene threats about what would happen when the walls fell. Marcus moved constantly, shoring up weak points, encouraging flagging spirits. He was everywhere at once. The lion of Carthage fully awakened, but channeled now toward protection rather than mere survival. When young Demetrius took an arrow to the shoulder, Marcus was there to drag him to safety. When the orphans huddled in terror at the bestial howls, he gathered them close and told them stories of brave warriors who faced down monsters. "Are we going to die?" little Anna asked, her eyes wide with fear. She couldn't have been more than 6, the same age as Livia had been. Marcus knelt before her, his scarred hands gentle on her small shoulders. "We're going to fight," he said simply. "And sometimes when good people fight together, miracles happen. Can you be brave for me, little owl?" The nickname slipped out unbidden, and Anna nodded solemnly. "I'll try. That's all anyone can ask." That night, as the festival entered its final day, Cassius himself appeared at the walls. He rode a white horse, pristine toga, a stark contrast to the savage wolves around him. "Marcus," he called out, voice dripping false concern, "this has gone on long enough. Surrender yourself, and I give you my word the others will be spared. Continue this farce, and every man, woman, and child in that temple dies screaming." Marcus appeared on the wall, letting Cassius see him clearly. The senator's face twisted with satisfaction at finally cornering his prey. "Your word," Marcus said, letting his contempt show. "The word of a child killer. Tell me, Cassius, do you still see their faces? My son was 7, my daughter 8. Do they visit your dreams? Your family died because of your pride." Cassius snarled, mask slipping. "You could have thrown one fight. One. Instead, you cost me a fortune, humiliated me before the Senate. Their blood is on your hands, Gladiator." "No," Marcus said quietly, but his voice carried in the still air. "Their blood is on yours, and soon you'll answer for it. Soon I'll have your head on a spike." Cassius wheeled his horse around. "Brutus, end this farce at dawn. Festival be damned. I want that temple burned, and everyone in it dead." The final night was the longest. Everyone knew dawn would bring the full assault. Festival protection ended. Marcus gathered his defenders for what might be their last council. They crowded into the main hall, guardians, healers, even some of the older orphans who insisted on fighting. Faces were drawn with exhaustion and fear, but also determination. "I won't lie to you," Marcus began. "Tomorrow they come with everything. We've bloodied their nose, frustrated their plans, but now the real fight begins. Some of us won't see another sunset." He paused, meeting eyes around the room. "But every hour we hold, every wolf we bring down, is a victory, not just for us, but for everyone who's ever been crushed by men like Cassius. We stand not just for this temple, but for the idea that good people can resist evil, even when the odds are impossible." "Pretty speech," Quintus muttered, but he was smiling. "Almost makes me think we have a chance." "We do have a chance," Livia interjected fiercely. "The garrison may not come in time," Marcus finished gently. "We can't count on rescue. We can only count on each other, on the strength we've found together, on the skills we've learned, on the blessed ground we defend." He drew his sword, laying it on the table. "I release anyone who wishes to leave. Try for the forest in the dark, scatter and hide. No shame in survival." No one moved, not one person. Claudia stood, her exhaustion evident, but spirit unbroken. "The goddess stands with those who stand for others. We are where we're meant to be. All of us." She looked directly at Marcus. "Even those who came here broken and leave whole." The vigil began. Weapons were checked and rechecked. Final prayers offered. Marcus found himself sitting with Livia and several of the orphans, showing them one last time how to hold their knives, where to strike for maximum effect. It felt wrong teaching children to kill, but leaving them defenseless felt worse. "Marcus," Livia said quietly as the others practiced, "whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know, you saved me, not just from the slavers, from despair, from believing the world held no more heroes." "I'm no hero," Marcus protested. "No," she agreed. "You're something better. You're a man who chooses to be good, even when life has given you every reason to be cruel. That's the kind of courage that matters." Dawn came too soon, heralded by the sound of marching feet. The black wolves had abandoned all pretense of disorder, forming ranks with military precision. Brutus rode at their head, massive sword across his saddle. Behind them, Cassius's soldiers prepared siege equipment, proper ladders, a real battering ram, everything needed to break a fortified position. Marcus took his position at the main gate, the most likely point of concentrated assault. Around him stood his best fighters. Quintus, despite his wounds, the most skilled guardians, and Livia, who had refused all orders to stay with the wounded. "Together," she said simply when he tried to send her away. "Remember, the attack, when it came, was overwhelming. Arrows darkened the sky, forcing defenders to cover. Under that covering fire, wolves raced forward with ladders, throwing them against walls at multiple points. The battering ram rumbled toward the gate, shielded by overlapping shields, and everywhere the howling, that bestial sound designed to freeze blood and break spirits. But the defenders held. Marcus had taught them well, and desperation gave them strength. Ladders were pushed back. Climbing wolves met with spears and righteous fury. Boiling water prepared by the healers rained down on the ram crew, sending them screaming back. For one glorious moment, it seemed the temple might hold. Then Brutus himself entered the fray. The giant warrior led a concentrated assault on the eastern wall, his massive strength making mockery of defensive preparations. He was first up the ladder, sweeping aside defenders like wheat before a scythe. Others followed in his wake, and suddenly wolves were inside the compound. "Fall back to the inner temple," Marcus commanded, even as he raced to contain the breach. He met Brutus in the courtyard, where he'd trained his people, their swords meeting with a crash that sent sparks flying. The wolf leader was monstrously strong, but Marcus had speed and skill, dancing away from crushing blows that shattered stone where they landed. Around them the battle raged in desperate knots of violence. Marcus saw Quintus fall, 3 wolves bearing him down. Saw young Demetrius standing over a wounded healer, holding off attackers with trembling sword. Saw Livia fighting back-to-back with a guardian, her face fierce with concentration, and through it all he fought Brutus, neither able to gain clear advantage. "You fight well for a broken man," Brutus grunted, pressing hard. "Still good enough for you," Marcus retorted, scoring a line across the giant's arm. They might have fought to mutual destruction, but fate intervened in the form of a horn call, not from the wolves but from beyond the temple. The clear military note of a Roman garrison trumpet. The reinforcements had come. For a moment the battle paused, all eyes turning toward the sound. Then Cassius's voice rose in panic. "Kill them all! Quickly! Leave no witnesses!" But it was too late. The garrison cavalry burst from the forest, lances lowered, crashing into the rear of Cassius's forces. The senator's neat soldiers crumbled instantly, and even the black wolves wavered at this unexpected reversal. Brutus snarled, trying to rally his men, but the momentum had shifted. Defenders pushed out from the temple, catching the wolves between hammer and anvil. In the chaos, Marcus lost sight of Brutus, the giant vanishing into the melee. He fought his way toward where he'd last seen Livia, desperate to ensure her safety. He found her standing over Claudia, who had collapsed from exhaustion, defending her with desperate fury against two wolves. Marcus took them from behind. No honor in it, but no shame either. This was survival, not sport. The cavalry, Livia gasped. "They came, get Claudia inside," Marcus ordered. This isn't over, he was right. While the garrison had broken the assaults back, pockets of desperate fighting continued. Wolves tried to break free. Cassius's men surrendered or fled, and through it all, one voice rose above the chaos. Cassius himself screaming for Marcus's death, offering rewards to any who brought him the gladiator's head. Marcus found the senator near the shattered gate, protected by his last loyal guards. Their eyes met across the carnage, and in that moment, 2 years of hatred crystallized into pure purpose. Marcus advanced, and Cassius's guards moved to intercept. They were good, household troops trained well, but they weren't gladiators. They weren't fathers who'd lost everything. They weren't men with nothing left to lose and everything to avenge. Marcus cut through them like death itself. Every movement precise, economical, inevitable, and then it was just him and Cassius. The senator backing away, finally understanding that all his wealth and power meant nothing before a blade in the hands of someone with righteous fury. "Wait." Cassius raised trembling hands. "We can make a deal. Gold, lands, whatever you want. I want my family back," Marcus said quietly. "Can you give me that? I can make amends. The temple, I'll fund it, protect it." Too late. Marcus raised his sword, and Cassius fell to his knees. "Please, mercy, in the name of the gods." Marcus paused, sword point at the senator's throat. Around them, the battle was ending. Garrison soldiers mopping up resistance. He could hear Livia calling his name, hear Claudia's weak voice raised in prayer. For 2 years, he'd dreamed of this moment, planned exactly how he'd make Cassius suffer. But now, with vengeance literally at sword's point, he hesitated. "My son begged too," he said finally. "Did you show mercy then?" Cassius's silence was answer enough. But as Marcus drew back for the killing blow, Livia's hand caught his arm. "Marcus, no, not like this. Not in anger. He killed them," Marcus roared, tears streaming down his face. "My babies, my wife." "Yes," Livia said simply, "and killing him in cold blood makes you him. Is that what Aurelia would want? What little Livia and Gaius would want? Their father to become a murderer?" Marcus's sword shook. Every fiber of his being screamed for vengeance, for the satisfaction of watching Cassius's life drain away. But looking into Livia's eyes, so like his daughter's, so full of faith in him, he saw another path. Slowly, agonizingly, he lowered his blade. "Take him," he told the garrison commander who had appeared. "Let him face Roman justice for hiring the Black Wolves, for attacking a sacred temple." "No." Cassius lunged for a fallen sword, preferring death to disgrace. But his desperate attack was clumsy, easily deflected. Marcus's counterstrike was instinct, years of training moving his blade before thought could intervene. Cassius gasped, looking down at the steel through his chest. then up at Marcus with something almost like relief. "My family," Cassius whispered as he fell. "Tell them I'm sorry," and he was gone, leaving Marcus standing over another corpse, victory ashes in his mouth. Livia's arms went around him as his knees buckled, holding him as he sobbed, for his family, for himself, for the hollow emptiness where vengeance was supposed to bring peace. The aftermath of battle was always worse than the fighting itself. Marcus moved through the temple grounds like a ghost, helping where he could, cataloguing the cost of survival. Quintus lived barely, carried to the healers with wounds that would have killed a lesser man. Young Demetrius had survived his first real combat, though his eyes held the hollow look of innocence lost. Too many others hadn't been so fortunate. Marcus knew each face, each name, each story cut short. He found Claudia in the infirmary, looking like death itself, but still trying to heal others. "Enough," he said firmly, physically lifting her from a patient's bedside. "You've given enough. There are still wounded," she protested weakly, "and other healers to tend them. You've poured yourself out completely. Rest, or you'll be no good to anyone." He carried her to her own chambers, Livia trailing anxiously behind. As he set Claudia on her bed, she caught his hand. "I saw her again," she whispered. "Your daughter. In the battle she was there, standing between you and a wolf's blade. She protected you, Marcus. They all did. Your family. They've been watching, waiting for you to let them go." Marcus's throat tightened. "I don't know how." "Yes, you do. You started when you chose justice over vengeance, when you protected others instead of seeking death. They can rest now, knowing you'll live." Her eyes fluttered closed, exhaustion finally claiming her. The garrison commander, a grizzled veteran named Aurelius Cato, found Marcus sitting in the garden where patients had once walked in peace. Bodies had been cleared, but blood still stained the stones. "Quite a defense," Cato said, settling beside him with a grunt. "Haven't seen civilians fight like that since the Germanic campaigns." "They weren't civilians by the end," Marcus replied. "Just people protecting what mattered. The Senate will want a full report. A senator hiring the Black Wolves, attacking a temple, heads will roll. Probably literally." Cato studied him. "They'll want to reward you. The hero of Minerva's temple, they're already calling it, could probably get your citizenship restored. Maybe even a command." Marcus almost laughed. "I don't want rewards. I just want—" He paused, realizing he didn't know how to finish that sentence. "Peace?" Cato suggested. "In my experience, men like us don't find peace in retirement. We find it in purpose. Speaking of which," he handed Marcus a scroll. "Found this in Cassius's effects. Thought you should see it." Marcus unrolled the parchment, recognizing Cassius's seal. It was a confession of sorts, detailing his crimes, his debts, his desperate schemes. At the bottom, written in shaking hand, were the words, "I became a monster to avoid becoming nothing. May the gods forgive me. May Marcus Aurelius forgive me. I cannot forgive myself." Bastast got philosophical at the end. Cato observed. Marcus stared at the confession, feeling something shift inside his chest. Not forgiveness, that was too much to ask, but understanding, perhaps. Cassius had been weak, cruel, driven by fear and greed. But in his final moments, he'd been human, broken, like everyone else. The next days blurred together. Funerals for the fallen, with Marcus speaking words over each one. Repairs to the temple, hands working together to erase battle scars. The garrison stayed to ensure no other threats emerged, and slowly, life returned to something approaching normal. Marcus threw himself into work, training those who still wished to learn, helping rebuild what was broken. But at night, alone, he felt the weight of survival. One evening, Livia found him in the sanctum, sitting before Minerva's statue. She sat beside him without speaking, comfortable in shared silence. Finally, she said, "Claudia's getting stronger. She said to thank you for making her rest. Someone had to. She'd heal herself to death if allowed. Like someone else would fight himself to death. Livia suggested gently. We're all broken in our own ways, Marcus. The lucky ones find others to help hold the pieces together. Marcus looked at her, this young woman who'd become family when he'd thought that impossible. What will you do now? The danger's past. You could go anywhere. Could I? She smiled. My home is here. My family is here. Why would I leave? She paused, then added, what about you? Commander Cato said Rome wants to honor you. Rome can keep its honors. I've had enough of glory. He touched Aurelia's bracelet, still at his belt. I thought killing Cassius would bring peace, thought it would somehow balance the scales. But it didn't work that way, does it? No, Livia agreed. But living well might. Helping others, protecting the innocent, building instead of destroying, your family. They'd want you happy, Marcus. Not just surviving, but live. That night Marcus dreamed, not of blood and death, but of sunlight. His family was there, but not as he'd last seen them. Aurelia smiled. Young Livia danced. Gaius played with wooden soldiers. They were in a field of golden wheat, wind making waves through the grain. Aurelia approached, touched his face with ghostly fingers. Time to let go, she whispered. Time to live. Will be here when your time truly comes. But not yet, my love, not yet. He woke with tears on his face, but felt lighter than he had in years. The memorial came a month later. The temple had commissioned a sculptor to create a monument to the fallen, not just those who died in the battle, but all who had lost their lives to tyranny and cruelty. Marcus stood with the other survivors as Claudia unveiled it, a simple stone marked with names and crowned with Minerva's owl. His family's names were there, along with the defenders who'd fallen, united in remembrance. We gather not in sorrow but in celebration, Claudia said, her voice carrying across the crowd. These names represent love that evil could not destroy, courage that tyranny could not break. They are gone but not lost, departed but not forgotten. In our memories, in our actions, in our choice to build rather than destroy, they live on. As people placed flowers at the memorial's base, a small hand tugged at Marcus's tunic. He looked down to find Anna, the orphan he'd called Little Owl. Master Marcus, she said seriously, I'm not afraid anymore. You were right. When good people stand together, miracles happen. He knelt to her level, remembering another little girl, another time. Yes, they do. And you were very brave, Little Owl. Will you stay? She asked. Will you keep teaching us? Marcus looked around at the gathered faces. Livia smiling encouragingly, Claudia nodding with that knowing look, Quintus leaning on a crutch, but grinning, the guardians and healers and orphans who'd become his unexpected family. His hand went to Aurelia's bracelet, and for the first time touching it brought warmth instead of pain. Yes, he said simply, I'll stay. Later, as the ceremony ended and people dispersed, Marcus found himself alone with Claudia in the garden. She looked healthier, the deathly pallor replaced by natural color. You've decided, she said, not a question. The commander offered me a position training garrison recruits, combined with work here at the temple, teaching those who wish to learn defense. He paused. It feels like what I'm meant to do. And Livia, Marcus smiled, despite himself, has appointed herself my assistant, says someone needs to ensure I don't work myself to death. She's not wrong. Claudia touched his shoulder. You know, when I first dreamed of you, I saw a man drowning in darkness. Now I see light, not blinding, not without shadow, but real light nonetheless. Your sister saved me, Marcus said quietly. You both did. This place did. No. Claudia corrected gently. You saved yourself. We just reminded you that you were worth saving. As seasons turned, the temple became something more than a place of healing. It became a symbol of resistance against tyranny, a training ground for those who would defend the innocent. Marcus taught combat, but more than that, he taught courage, honor, the strength found in standing together. His students came from all walks, former slaves, farmers, even nobles, seeking meaning beyond wealth and status. Livia was always there, organizing, encouraging, becoming the heart of their small community. Their relationship deepened from gratitude to friendship to something more, though neither rushed to name it. They had time now, time Marcus had never thought to have again. One evening as spring brought new flowers to the garden, Marcus sat with Quintus, watching students train. His old friend had recovered, though he walked with a permanent limp. "Never thought I'd see the Lion of Carthage teaching farmers to hold swords," Quintus mused. "The lion died with his family," Marcus replied. "I'm just Marcus now, just Marcus who saved a temple, defeated the Black Wolves, and started a movement that has the Senate nervous about armed civilians." Quintus grinned. "Face it, brother, you're still changing the world, just differently than before." As if summoned by the conversation, Livia appeared with Anna and several other orphans in tow. "Master Marcus," Anna announced proudly, "we've been practicing the defensive forms." What followed was enthusiastic if imperfect. Young bodies trying to replicate movements designed for adults. But their spirit was unmistakable, their determination clear. When they finished, breathless and beaming, Marcus applauded. "Well done, all of you. Remember, the greatest strength isn't in the sword, but in the heart that wields it." They chorused, clearly having heard this many times. As the children scampered off, Livia settled beside him. "You're good with them. Natural teacher, they remind me." He started, then stopped. "Of your children," she finished gently. "And that's okay. Love isn't diminished by being shared, Marcus. It grows." That night, in the sanctum, Marcus knelt before Minerva's statue. But this time, he wasn't asking for anything. "Thank you," he whispered, "for the chance to matter again, to talk again, to love again." He placed Aurelius' bracelet at the statue's base, an offering and a release. "Watch over them for me," he asked, "until I see them again." "But not yet, not yet." As he rose to leave, an owl called from somewhere in the temple grounds, Minerva's voice perhaps, or just a bird hunting in darkness. Either way, Marcus took it as approval. He had work tomorrow, students to train, a life to build. The Lion of Carthage was gone, but Marcus Aurelius remained, scarred but whole, grieving but growing, alone no longer. In the morning he would rise early. As always, he would train those who sought strength, comfort those who knew loss, stand between the innocent and those who would harm them. He would live, fully and freely, carrying his love for the lost as motivation rather than burden. And someday, when his work was truly done, he would see them again. Aurelia with her summer laugh, little Livia with her warrior's heart, gentle Gaius with his wooden horses. But not yet, not yet. The temple bells rang, calling the community to evening meal. Marcus heard Livia's voice raised in laughter, Claudia's gentle tones, Quintus's booming commentary. His family, not replacement for what was lost, but addition to it, proof that the heart could expand infinitely when allowed. He walked toward the sound, toward the light, toward the life he'd thought impossible. Behind him in the sanctum, Minerva's stone eyes watched with approval. The broken gladiator who'd arrived seeking death had become something far more powerful, a man who'd learned to live again, to hope again, to love again. The goddess's work was complete, though Marcus would continue it, one life at a time, one student at a time, one day at a time. The greatest victory, after all, wasn't in the arena or on the battlefield. It was in choosing to continue when everything said stop, in building when the world seemed bent on destruction, in opening a scarred heart to new possibilities. Marcus had won that victory, aided by a healer's wisdom and a young woman's faith. And in the gardens of Minerva's temple, where blood had been spilled and washed away, new flowers bloomed. Life, as always, found a way. Love, as always, endured. And broken things, when tended with care, became beautiful in their imperfection. The story of Marcus Aurelius, gladiator no more but teacher, protector, and survivor, continued, not with the roar of crowds or clash of swords, but with quiet moments of connection, patient instruction, and the gradual healing that comes from purpose returned. He had been the Lion of Carthage, feared and famous. Now he was simply Marcus, beloved and necessary. It was, he thought as he joined his chosen family for the evening meal, more than enough. It was everything. As night settled over the temple, stars emerged one by one, each a light against darkness. Marcus no longer looked at them and saw only emptiness. Now he saw promise, possibility, the infinite expanse of a life still to be lived. His hand went to his belt, where Aurelius' bracelet no longer hung. But the absence didn't pain him. Love wasn't in objects, but in memory, in action, in the choice to continue. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new students, new opportunities to matter. He would meet them all with open heart and ready hands, no longer the broken gladiator, but the man he'd chosen to become, the man his family would have wanted him to be, the man who'd learned that healing wasn't about forgetting pain, but transforming it into purpose. In the end, Claudia had been right. The goddess had broken him not to destroy, but to remake, and what emerged from that breaking was stronger than what had been before, not unmarked by loss, but deepened by it, not freed from love, but expanded in it. The Lion of Carthage was dead. Marcus Aurelius lived. And in that life, in that choice, in that daily decision to build rather than burn, lay the greatest victory of all. The autumn sun cast long shadows across the training ground as Marcus supervised the afternoon session. His hair had more grey now, and the lines around his eyes had deepened, but he moved with the same fluid grace that had once made him legendary in the arena. "Keep your guard up, Antonius," he called to a young recruit. "A lowered shield is an invitation to death." The boy corrected quickly, and Marcus nodded approval before moving to the next pair of sparring partners. "You're getting soft in your old age," Livia teased from the courtyard's edge, cradling their infant daughter. Little Aurelia, barely 6 months old, gurgled happily in her mother's arms. They had married 2 years prior in a simple ceremony in Minerva's sanctum, Claudia officiating with tears of joy streaming down her face. The decision to name their daughter after Marcus's first wife had come naturally, a way to honor the past while embracing the future. Soft, Marcus raised an eyebrow, walking over to kiss his wife and stroke his daughter's cheek. "Tell that to the recruits who can barely stand after morning drills." But his eyes were gentle as he gazed at his family, still sometimes disbelieving that life had granted him this second chance. The temple had grown in 5 years, becoming not just a place of healing but a center of learning and justice. The School of Minerva, as people had taken to calling it, drew students from across the empire, not to become gladiators or soldiers but guardians, protectors who understood that true strength meant defending those who couldn't defend themselves. The Senate, initially suspicious, had come to value the graduates who served with distinction in city guards and personal protection details across Roman territory. "Letter from Quintus," Livia said, producing a scroll. Marcus's old friend had returned to Rome, using his influence and wealth to establish sanctuaries for retired gladiators and escaped slaves. They corresponded regularly, 2 old warriors finding new purpose in their autumn years. The letter spoke of success in the Senate, another sanctuary approved, more lives salvaged from the arena's bloody sand. As Marcus read, Anna ran up, now 11 and growing like wheat in summer. She'd never left the temple, declaring it her home and Marcus her true father in all but blood. Master Marcus, the new students are here." Behind her trooped a nervous group of would-be guardians, eyes wide as they beheld the famous training grounds where the Black Wolves had been defeated. "So they are," Marcus said warmly, handing the baby back to Livia. "Welcome to the School of Minerva. I am Marcus Aurelius, and I'll be your primary instructor. Some call me the Lion of Carthage, but that was another life. Here I'm simply your teacher, and if you're willing to work, I'll teach you to be more than fighters. I'll teach you to be guardians." He began the same speech he gave every new class, but his mind drifted as he spoke the familiar words. 5 years since that desperate battle, since Cassius fell and Brutus the Red vanished into history. 5 years of building instead of destroying, of teaching instead of killing. The nightmares still came sometimes: Aurelius' scream, little Livia's tears, Gaius's small body, but they no longer dominated his sleep. Now he more often dreamed of his students' successes, of lives saved rather than taken. Claudia emerged from the temple's healing wing, moving slowly but steadily. The toll of her gift had aged her prematurely, silver threading through her dark hair, though she'd seen only 30 summers. But her eyes remained bright, her smile warm as she watched the new student. She trained other healers in her methods, teaching them that true healing addressed both body and spirit. The temple now housed a dozen such healers, each finding their own balance between gift and sacrifice. They looked promising, she said, joining Marcus as the students began basic exercises. "I sense good hearts among them. Good hearts can be shaped into strong guardians," Marcus agreed. "Speaking of which, how is young Titus recovering?" Claudia's expression softened. "Better. The wounds to his body heal quickly. The wounds from seeing his village burned," she sighed. "Those will take longer. I thought perhaps you might speak with him. You understand such wounds better than most." Marcus nodded. It had become part of his role, not just teaching combat, but counseling those who'd survived trauma. He'd resisted at first, feeling unqualified to guide others. Through darkness he'd barely escaped himself. But Livia had insisted, and she'd been right as usual. Sometimes the best healers were those who bore their own scars openly, proof that survival was possible. That evening, after classes ended and students dispersed to their quarters, Marcus found Titus sitting alone in the garden. The boy, he couldn't be more than 16, stared at nothing, hands clenched into fists. Marcus recognized the posture, the barely contained rage and grief. He'd worn it himself for 2 long years. "It doesn't go away," Marcus said quietly, settling beside him. "The anger, the images, the feeling that you should have done more, been there, died with them." Titus looked up sharply, surprised. "But it changes, transforms, becomes something you can carry instead of something that carries you." "They killed everyone," Titus whispered. "My mother, my sisters, because we couldn't pay their protection tax. I hid in the root cellar, like a coward, while they—" His voice broke. "You survived," Marcus said firmly. "That's not cowardice. That's what they would have wanted. Your family, they'd want you alive, building a life that honors their memory." He paused, choosing words carefully. "I lost my family too. Wife, daughter, son, murdered because I refused to bow to a corrupt senator. For 2 years, I wanted nothing but death, thought it would reunite us, balance the scales." "What changed?" Titus asked. Marcus smiled sadly. "I met people who reminded me that the dead don't need our guilt. They need our remembrance, our choice to live the lives they couldn't, to protect others as we couldn't protect them." He gestured to the temple grounds. "Everyone here has lost something, someone. But together, we've built something from that loss. A place where the innocent can find protection, where the broken can heal, where those who've known darkness can learn to carry light." They talked until full dark, Marcus sharing his story without reservation. The arena, the loss, the long road back to something resembling wholeness. Titus wept, raged, and finally, exhaustedly, accepted the beginning of healing. As the boy trudged back to the dormitories, Marcus felt the satisfaction that came from passing on what had been given to him. The cycle of healing, Claudia called it, pain transformed to purpose, purpose shared with others, others finding their own transformation. Livia was waiting in their quarters, little Aurelia asleep in her crib. "How was he?" she asked, pulling Marcus into an embrace. "Where I was 5 years ago," but he'll make it. He has the strength, just needs to find it. Marcus held his wife close, still marveling at the simple pleasure of coming home to family. Some days I can hardly believe this is real, that I got a second chance. Not a second chance, Livia corrected, a continuation. Your story didn't end with loss, Marcus. It paused, transformed, and continued. Different, but not lesser, fuller, even. Later, unable to sleep, Marcus walked the grounds as was his habit. The memorial stood in the moonlight, names etched in stone made silver by Luna's light. He traced familiar letters: Aurelia, Livia, Gaius, then the newer additions from the battle and the years since. Death was never far from a place of healing, but neither was life. For every name on the stone, dozens lived because of the temple's work. Can't sleep either. Quintus's voice startled him. His old friend had arrived that evening, making one of his periodic visits. Despite his limp, Quintus moved quietly when he chose. Old habits, Marcus replied. You know how it is. I do indeed. Quintus studied the memorial. Think they'd be proud. Our dead, I hope so. We've built something good here, Quintus. Something that matters. The mighty lion of Carthage, reduced to teaching farmers and orphans to hold swords. Quintus teased, but his tone was warm. Who would have believed it? I prefer it, Marcus said simply. In the arena I took lives for sport. Here I save them through preparation. It's a better legacy. They stood in comfortable silence, two old warriors who'd found purpose beyond the blade. The night wind carried the sound of owl calls, Minerva's voices perhaps, or just nocturnal hunters. Either way, the sound no longer brought pain but comfort. The goddess had kept her bargain, bringing healing to the broken gladiator who'd arrived seeking only death. As dawn approached, Marcus made his way back to his quarters. Livia stirred as he entered, making room for him in their bed. Little Aurelia slept on, tiny fist curled against her cheek, in a gesture so reminiscent of her namesake, that Marcus's heart clenched, not with pain but with bittersweet love. His first family lived on in Imam and Memorial. His second family grew in love and hope. Both were real, both were his, both were gifts beyond measure. I love you, he whispered to Livia, who smiled sleepily and pulled him close. And I love you, my guardian. Now sleep. Tomorrow brings new students to train, new lives to shape. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the weight of contentment rather than despair. Tomorrow would indeed bring challenges, students to train, broken souls to counsel, a baby daughter to raise in a world still dangerous despite their small sanctuary of peace. But he would meet those challenges with open heart and steady hands, no longer the lion seeking death in the arena, but Marcus Aurelius, teacher and protector, husband and father, broken once but remade stronger. In the growing light of dawn, the temple bells began to ring, calling the community to a new day. Marcus listened to their bronze voices with gratitude. Each peal marked time, not just passing but filled with purpose. Each day a gift, each student a possibility, each moment of peace a victory against the darkness that would always threaten, but could never fully triumph, while good people stood together. The gladiator was gone, the guardian remained, and in that transformation lay proof that even the most shattered life could be rebuilt, that love could grow in watered by tears, that the human spirit could endure loss and emerge not unmarked but undaunted. Marcus Aurelius had learned the hardest lesson of all, not how to die with honor, but how to live with hope. And so he did, one day at a time, one student at a time, one small act of courage at a time, building a legacy not of sand and blood, but of stone and salvation. The lion's roar had become a teacher's patient instruction. The warrior's rage had become a protector's vigilance. The broken man's despair had become a survivor's quiet strength. It was, he knew, as sleep finally claimed him, more than enough. It was everything. And tomorrow, When he woke to his daughter's cries and his wife's kiss and his students' eager faces, he would choose it all again. Choose life over death, building over burning, hope over despair. Choose to honor the lost by living fully, love completely, and protecting fiercely those given into his care. The story of Marcus Aurelius would continue, written now not in scars but in lives saved, not in victories but in vigilance, not in fame but in the quiet satisfaction of duty done well. He had been the lion of Carthage, and that lion had needed to die for the man to truly live. Now he was simply Marcus, teacher, protector, survivor, and living proof that even the deepest wounds could heal if tended with wisdom, faith, and love. In Minerva's temple, where broken things came to be mended, the greatest healing of all had taken place. A gladiator had found his humanity, a fighter had discovered peace, a grieving father had learned to love again. And in that transformation, countless others would find their own paths from darkness to light, guided by one who had walked that path before them and lived to light the way. The sun rose full over the temple, painting the world in gold and promise. Marcus Aurelius slept peacefully beside his wife, their daughter safe between them, while outside the work of healing and teaching continued. The circle turned, unbroken and unending, proof that love was stronger than loss, hope mightier than despair, and that sometimes in the hands of the divine and the determination of the human spirit, the most beautiful things grew from the deepest pain. The gladiator's tale was ended. The guardian's story would continue as long as there were those who needed protection, guidance, and the patient proof that broken did not mean worthless, that scarred did not mean ugly, and that even in the darkest night, dawn would always come for those who had the courage to wait for it, and the wisdom to recognize it when it arrived. And in the temple of Minerva, dawn came daily, bringing with it new chances, new choices, and new confirmation that the goddess of wisdom had known exactly what she was doing when she sent a broken gladiator not death, but life, not ending but transformation, not forgetting, but the far harder task of remembering with love, rather than only pain. The story ended where all true stories do, not with ending, but with continuation, not with answers, but with acceptance, not with completion, but with the quiet understanding that some tales are too large for single lifetimes, and so pass from one generation to the next, each adding their own thread to the tapestry. Marcus Aurelius had added his thread, blood-red, darkening to purple, then brightening to gold. Others would add theirs, guided by his example and teachings, and the tapestry would grow, telling always the same essential truth, that love endures, that broken things can be beautiful, and that sometimes the greatest victory is simply choosing to continue when everything screams stop.